Of great importance also is the education of our children. There is so much inequity in the current situation where many children are unable to benefit fully from this distance learning. Many families cannot even pay their bills, as I have just mentioned, especially having now to deal with internet and Wi-Fi. This situation can have a long-term negative impact on the education and lives of our children. Agriculture is not given the attention that it certainly deserves, especially as it relates to building our immune system and having some nutritional policies in place. What we eat contributes significantly to our health problems and our health status. And the government, again, has not done enough to help families and communities put more emphasis on agriculture and feeding ourselves. The NDC has made the commitment before and states again tonight that agriculture will play a leading, prominent role in building back a healthy and prosperous nation. When you look at the social and cultural environment, we've seen our lives disrupted, and we realize that COVID must look in ways in which this country is being affected and in ways in which we have to deal with the stresses associated with the pandemic. There is a need to help people cope with the real mental health issues we are facing in this new era of life. Many people are going through depression without even realizing it. Many are walking around smiling and speaking positively, but deep down inside, we are all in pain. Many are having difficulties explaining to their children why they cannot afford to provide the basic needs as they usually did in the past. There are real struggles in most households to survive, and we must look seriously at how we can make the best with this current situation. The Grenadian people needs stronger leadership that is concerned with the well-being and prosperity of all Grenadians and not just a few. A people-centered agenda will be the centerpiece of the NDC administration, and everyone, that means all Grenadians, will have the opportunity to pursue their dreams in an environment of love and togetherness. Sisters and brothers, while much attention is being placed on COVID, there are many other realities that needs addressing in our health systems. A lot of families are going through the stresses, and the numbers with regards to domestic violence and abuse has been shown to increase, not just in Grenada, but worldwide. Diabetes and hypertension is still wreaking havoc throughout the community. While we do not have COVID patients in our hospitals, we are still seeing that the beds are filled with sick chronic disease patients. We need to pay more attention to the management of our chronic diseases, because we know that diabetes and hypertension is part of the big problem that affecting us in Grenada. We're hearing concerns about what is going on in Princess Alice Hospital and the lack of care and love that is perceived to be taking place there. Our primary healthcare program has been given more lip service than anything else by this administration. But it is imperative that we take a serious look at what primary healthcare really means and show how community involvement is a necessary component of that program. The government has been making periodic references to national health insurance, but the majority of Grenadians still doesn't know the details of what is being planned. We cannot go on the government website and get information, but they have indicated that they are working on legislation. The NDC has said it many times before that this government will not be able to implement a comprehensive national health insurance program because they are not doing it through the genuine consultation and understanding the main problems that NHI needs to address. When we look at the quality of health services provided in the government services and government facilities, most people perceive it to be of a poor quality. and this is having a serious impact on the health status and quality of lives of all Grenadians. When Grenadians feel sick, most people prefer to visit a private doctor than to go to one of the health centers. We must ask ourselves why. If we must have a proper health system and a national health insurance program, all Grenadians should feel confident to go to a health center in their community and access quality care in a timely manner and have the necessary materials and services available to deal with the health needs of our population. We are not seeing this, and this is one of the main things, the main components of a strong health system. Health education and promotion seems almost non-existent at this time, when we need to hear the positive messages that would help us cope with the stresses associated with this COVID pandemic. We're hearing about lots of environmental issues, and the Environmental Health Department is struggling to deal with the problems of sewage in several of the sites in Lacalome and in Mongay and in other areas of the country. Garbage disposal is still an issue in many parts of the country, and the mosquito situation is still creating problems, and we're still having issues with regards to dengue. Finally, what are some of the specific recommendations that can be made to help this country move forward? And despite the current realities of COVID, how we can deal with life as we move forward? Firstly, the NDC believes that the level of dialogue and communication with the public must be given higher priority. We believe that this government is not as transparent and as forthcoming with information as the public deserves. We have to realize that in order to cope with this pandemic, it is important that communication play an important role. The communication should focus on building trust, reducing fear, strengthening collaboration, and promoting a better quality of life for all Grenadians under this current situation. We believe that communication is an important element, and it must also mean greater collaboration with the various stakeholders in Grenada. The health workers, the Nurse and Medical Association, other professional bodies, the private providers, St. George's University, the University of the West Indies, Grenadians in the diaspora. As a matter of fact, we need to have consultation with all Grenadians to really appreciate the problems that we need to address and how we can all work together in a collaborative manner. The final recommendation that we are putting forward out there is the importance of using telemedicine and technology to really look at the future of healthcare in Grenada. What has happened in most countries of the world is that the use of the digital technology and telemedicine for consultation has taken a lot of greater prominence. And we believe that in our health system, we need to find a mechanism to really harness the information needs of the country and by extension, the health system. But what mechanism will the NDC propose to fully address this? And this comes as one of the central recommendations in a people-centered approach that the NDC is going to be implementing when given the opportunity. The importance of focusing on strengthening the social security institution of our country. We have to realize that the current realities of the NIS in the country does not really address the comprehensive social security needs of the population. And Grenadians from birth to death have social security needs. So simply having a unique identifier, your social security number from birth throughout your life, is one of the easier recommendations that can be implemented. But the NDC is proposing a comprehensive review of our social security institution and their functions with a view to ensuring that the whole issue of social security is addressed in a much more comprehensive way, and programs such as those under the Ministry of Social Services can be used in a joint way to make sure that the social security needs of our population is of a priority. So I will stop here. I want to thank everyone for listening, and I look forward to having more discussion with you as we get into the question session. Thank you very much. You're on mute, Sister Val.
Thank you very much, Ken. Excellent presentation. I noticed you stuck to the time. Wonderful. If we continue like this tonight, you set the trend, it will go very well. I just wanted to comment briefly on something you pointed to, and that is the issue of families, low-income families. That is a grave concern that's being reported, have severe issues and challenges coping in this new normal. If you could imagine if you could think about the levels of poverty in our country as established in the National Survey of Living Conditions some time ago. I don't know if they've done one since 2008, but then it was about 37%, with about 12% indigent people and a certain percentage above those living below the poverty line who are vulnerable, i.e. one paycheck away from going below the poverty line. If anybody else has any details about that, it'd be useful to share, because that paints a picture. So now when we're talking about the situation, we talk about the macro situation, and we don't recognize the severity of the impact on the small family there who is living in a 2-room house. And I'm not talking 2-bedroom, no, 2-room house, who has no electricity, not far less to have internet for the kids who live there to be able to keep abreast of the education, the online education. So thank you very much, Ken, for highlighting the issues in the family and with these families and concerns. And I hope that others will point to that as well. Let me move right along to our second panelist, who will speak to us about a government that has squandered the goodwill of workers. We have with us veteran trade unionist and civil servant, Mr. Ray Roberts. Ray is a communications practitioner with a professional record that validates his professional training in the field. Beginning his formal communication education with journalism training in UE Center, he went on to obtain an associate degree in radio, TV technology, and journalism from Miami-Dade Community, Florida. He's also a beneficiary of the Thompson Foundation Journalism Scholarship in the UK. Ray has dedicated his life to public service. Having served the government, having served in that service since 1975, he's spent almost 4 decades in several different departments and ministries of government, primarily Government Information Service, Ministry of Sports, News Director of the Grenada Broadcasting Corporation, Personnel Manager at that same company, Senior Information Manager at GIS, as well as the Director. Complementing his professional work, Ray spent almost 3 decades serving on the executive of the Public Workers Union and 20 years as General Secretary of the Grenada Trades Union Council, which is an umbrella body for trade unions in Grenada. Both organizations provided opportunities for representing workers at the regional and international conferences, including the Caribbean Public Service Association and the Caribbean Labor Congress, as well as the International Confederation for Free Trade Unions. It must be noted that the Grenada Trade Unions Council appointed Ray as its labor representative in the Senate in 2013, replacing Chester Humphrey. He was the GUTC representative on the Social Partners Organization, which brings representatives from the labor movement, employers, NGOs, churches together to discuss national issues such as Grenada's 2031 IMF program. Ray has also distinguished himself as an athlete and administrator, former national table tennis champion, represented Grenada at the Commonwealth Table Tennis Championship in Scotland in 1979, along with Caribbean and OECS tournaments, was an official in the 1984 Grenada team, which debuted in Olympics in Los Angeles. As an administrator, second vice president of the Grenada Olympic Committee, 2008 to 2012, and chairman of the St. George's Cricket Council, and currently president of the Grenada Paralympics Committee and secretary of the Grenada Table Tennis Association. Ray also has a son who is attending Midwestern University in Texas. I am honored to bring to you one of Grenada's top leading and most veteran trade unionists, Mr. Ray Roberts, to speak to you on how the government has squandered the goodwill of workers.
Thank you, Val, and a very pleasant evening to you, Val. Very smart look this evening. And may I also recognize our party leader, Brother Adrian, Chairman, Brother Terry, as well as GenSec, Brother Glenn, and my colleague panelists. Congratulations, Brother Kennedy, wonderful presentation. Phillip Telesford, Tevin Andrew, good to be with you. Good to hear you from Caracou in a moment. And to all our listeners and viewers on whichever platform you may be. This evening, as the moderator indicated, my presentation will focus on a government that has squandered the goodwill of workers. I will attempt to demonstrate the solidarity that workers, unionized workers, and workers in general have given to the government in the last 7 years, the treatment of the government to workers, and the impact it has had on workers during that period. I look forward to your questions and queries at the end of the presentation. The challenge of the Grenadian workforce are awesome, gigantic, and daunting in this period of the COVID pandemic. Quoting from the Honorable Anthony Boson during one of his presentations in the Parliament, he said, unemployment could be as high as 50%, and that was during the peak of the COVID lockdown. In recent times, there have been better days for Grenadian businesses and workers. Nevertheless, workers, and in particular, ordinary workers, meaning domestic, and those in the service industry, among others, are continuing to experience the toughest time of their life. For example, South St. George, where the St. George's University is a big provider of jobs for very ordinary people, specifically students requiring cleaning services, among others. With few students on the island or on campus, these people are today unemployed. Then we have the hotel and cruise ship industries. Again, ordinary workers are feeling the brunt of these two industries' re-employment. The trend of joblessness among ordinary workers as a result of COVID is nationwide. We have to admit that no one was prepared for today's reality. It came like a thief in the night. And let me say, there is no easy solution to the many challenges brought about by the pandemic. However, rising to the challenge is the requirement. Demonstrating your leadership and tenacity is what will distinguish a government. And that's where our government has failed the ordinary workers. I specifically want to say ordinary workers, like it or not, they are the ones who in downtime will find it challenging to find employment. Those who are skilled can move here and there as well as travel. So I specifically will focus on ordinary workers. The social consciousness of the Grenada government has not blossomed as yet. Initially, there was a small stimulus package. NIS paid its part, but government was below par, struggling to honor its obligations in spite of boasting being the most successful economy in the OECS, and perhaps above all, boasting of having the best finance minister in the region. We in the NDC expected the government to utilize some of the vast resources of the citizenship by investment, as was done in St. Kitts Nevis, to support the plight of our ordinary workers. Not just monthly stipends being paid to them, but to create temporary jobs, enhancing the many tourism sites across the country, as well as community centers, schools, health centers, among others. Grenada has sold thousands of its passports via the Citizenship by Investment program, and millions ought to be in the Transformation Fund. You cannot blame workers who are very angry with the government at this time, and in particular, teachers and public officers who are today demanding their 4%. Public sector workers and workers in general have given maximum support to this government in the last 8 years. The most significant being in 2013, when the government embarked on its IMF Structural Adjustment Program. Remember, it was Prime Minister Dr. Keith Mitchell who in 1995 removed personal income tax. And I may tell you, it was against the advice of the Grenada Trade Union Council and all other organizations. Income tax was removed on workers making less than $60,000 a year. In 2013, we the workers reluctantly then accepted the same government imposing a 3% tax on our monthly wages. Undoubtedly, that impacted on the standard of living, particularly of people who had commitments on mortgages and others. A week before the 2018 elections, the government, that's the same government of Dr. Keith Mitchell, signed an MOU with unions, promising to reinstate public workers' constitutional pension. 3 years later, the result still zero. Equally important, and perhaps most important, the same government also promised public workers, those who have been in the service for many years and have met the qualification criteria, public service commission appointment in their temporary jobs. Today, 3 years later, it is almost zero. Clearly, our government has squandered the goodwill of the Grenadian workers. The workers have had enough and feel betrayed. My friends, judge for yourself. 2 years ago, the same government indiscriminately deducted from the monthly salary of workers, teachers, and public officers who took to the street to protest the failure of the same government to implement the 2018 MOU. They did so without even following the law of the land. My friends, it is clear that the workers of Grenada has demonstrated complete loyalty to the goodwill of the state. But as you can see by the action of the government, more so in this period when the poorest of the poorest are feeling the brunt of the economic meltdown, you can judge for yourself. This government has not shown a consciousness that certainly can impact the goodwill that we have shown to the government. And I say we because I still consider myself a worker. Madam Moderator, I look forward to active participation in that discussion. You need to take your mic off mute.
I'm sure I look forward to that too, Ray, because this is such a pressing issue affecting everybody across the board in Grenada. Let me say, though, that your presentation clearly demonstrates your experience, knowledge about the trade union movement and industrial relations climate in the country. Thank you very much, Ray, for your presentation, and especially because you have limited the time for your presentation to allow for questions. I would want to give you back some of that when we come to the question period. Moving along, I would like to introduce our next presenter, Mr. Tevin Andrews. Tevin will speak about the COVID-19 impact on Carriacou and Petit Martinique, as well as the situation with the youths. Tevin Andrews is an entrepreneur. He's currently the Public Relations Officer at the Carriacou Historical Society and Museum. He's a former youth ambassador, former chairman of the NDC Youth Movement, and former chairman of the NDC Carriacou and Petit Martinique Executive Branch. He is also currently the NDC caretaker for Carriacou and Petit Martinique. I'm honored to present Mr. Tevin Williams from the sister isle of Carriacou and Petit Martinique to share with us what is happening there. Welcome, Tevin.
Tevin, unmute.
Thank you very much, Sister Williams. I didn't realize that we were related. You mentioned that I'm Tevin Williams, but Tevin Andrews. But thank you. I don't mind joining your family. Very nice and lovely people.
We'll figure that out.
Definitely. I'll tell you how after the program.
Sure.
Let me take this opportunity, of course, good to say a good evening to everyone listening to this program on whatever platform, whether it's on the Facebook platform, the YouTube platform, or on Zoom, or on the popular radio station Vibes FM, Carriacou and Petit Martinique. Let me take this opportunity as well to big up the people of Carriacou and Petit Martinique, and in particular my supporters. I know they're all listening to this session and they're learning a lot. So big up yourself, supporters, especially supporters up at the party house on Sunday today. Well, today, as you mentioned, Sister Williams, I'm here to talk about COVID impact on Carriacou and Petit Martinique and on the youth of Grenada, Carriacou and Petit Martinique in general. So I'll start off with Carriacou and Petit Martinique. While the government must be commended on the handling of the COVID situation, that we didn't have any vast outbreaks and that it was relatively controlled, government ought to be, and people ought to be commended. And of course, the health professionals must be commended as well. Here in Carriacou, we have received, well, according to the statistics, no official case of COVID-19. Carriacou and Petit Martinique is indeed blessed. And the people of Carriacou and Petit Martinique ought to be commended for ensuring that they adhere to the COVID protocols and so forth. So the people of Carriacou and Petit Martinique ought to be commended. Interestingly, to note though, while COVID is such a serious pandemic and shouldn't be taken lightly, in Carriacou and Petit Martinique, if there were to be an outbreak, I don't think that the officials on island or the government will be prepared to handle a situation, an outbreak on Carriacou. And I'll tell you why. Presently, there is no official isolation unit at our hospital or no quarantine facility on the island. Sometime when the pandemic struck, the government officials identified a place for the isolation unit or for the quarantine. However, that place that they identified is presently in use by the staff of the Princess Royal Hospital. So unfortunately, as we speak today, we do not have any isolation unit or any quarantine site. And that's unfortunate, and I'm hoping that the authorities will do something about that. Many businesses on the island of Carriacou and Petit Martinique, regrettably, has been affected by COVID. Likewise, many businesses throughout the world and in Grenada has been affected. The sad thing about it is that no sort of relief was given to many of the businesses, especially the businesses that have been hit very hard. While the government gave out some sort of assistance through the NIS and to some tourism businesses, majority of businesses on Carriacou, especially those tourism businesses, did not receive the type of support they were hoping to get. More so the craft vendors, some of the taxi men and so on did not receive support. And that is something that they reminded me about during the week to talk about and to plead on their behalf that the authorities can do something about their situation so that they can get some sort of relief, because they're hurting. Most of the taxi men and the craft vendors depend heavily on the tourism, on the tourists coming into our islands. And due to the pandemic, not many tourists are traveling today. Hence, their businesses are affected. So it is important that government find some ways to help those taximen on the island of Carriacou and Petit Martinique and the craft vendors on island. They, I believe, fit the criteria. They pay their NIS, they are registered as legitimate businesses, and they should at least get some sort of support from the authorities as it relates to that. We have heard recently in the news, the Osprey Lines talking about the hardship that they are facing. But not only Osprey Line is facing the hardship, many of the passenger ferry services and the cargo boats are facing some very challenging times due to the restriction that was put on by the authorities, limiting the ferries to travel only for 3 days during the week. I think it's Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and all of them have to travel on that same day, which of course, if that continues to happen, then one will survive while the others sink, or all will just, all will be affected. And we can see if those businesses are affected, then it could of course affect how do we get to and from Grenada, Carriacou, and so forth. So it's important that government step in and allow the boats to travel, find a way so that everybody can eat a food, as we call it. So Carriacou and Petit Martinique has been impacted negatively, our economy, the small business, just think about it, we have been impacted just as every other community in Grenada. Something that I'll suggest though, I believe that in the future, that maybe a special relief package could be designed for the people of Carriacou and Petit Martinique and businesses of Carriacou and Petit Martinique, instead of putting it in that, creating a national relief packages and giving it out, and who gets first, good for them. Maybe something special should be created for the islands and people of Carriacou and Petit Martinique. It is a suggestion, and I'm hoping maybe the authorities can listen. But just maybe, had we had local government, it might have been so. So again, I'm using this opportunity to advocate for local government. And I want to take the opportunity to encourage the people of Carriacou and Petit Martinique to remain safe and do not let your guard down. The worst is, it's not over as yet. COVID is something that is real, and we want to keep Carriacou and Petit Martinique COVID-free. Let's keep it that way until things simmer down and gets down. And I'm hoping that the government create an enabling environment whereby the businesses can thrive once more on the island of Carriacou and Petit Martinique. Yeah, as it relates to youth, the young people, we have been impacted very hard. Let me put it that way. Many of our young people, many of us who have started business or who have businesses due to the COVID, some of our businesses are struggling or have fallen flat on the ground. Many of us who are studying and who worked in order to pay for our schooling had to stop because, of course, loss of jobs and priorities now to survive. So a number of us have stopped furthering our education because we don't have that extra income coming in because of loss of jobs. The statistics before the pandemic hit in terms of youth unemployment stand in the range approximately 48 to 50%. And you could only imagine the figure now, it's over 60% as it relates to youth unemployment. So it is a high figure. Young people, as it relates to our mental health, again, that is something, because this is something that this is something that is very new to everybody. It's not just the young people, but to everybody. And I believe that the authorities should put more emphasis on ensuring that counseling sessions and support is available to everybody, and in particular, the young people of the trial and state, whether at a community level, at a national level, but different ways to help our young people cope with this challenging time. And I want to be bold and advocate here again, that maybe a special stimulus package could be created for our young people, especially our young people that are involved in business, our young people that want to continue with their studies but had to stop, and many other aspects, so that we can get our young people, being progressive again. Yes, so I believe those are some of the things that ought to be done as it relates to our young people. But we have been impacted very hard due to the COVID, and we are hoping that the government create an enabling environment whereby we can flourish once more, and that the youth unemployment figures could come down. And while I take this opportunity to end, let me just stick in, as it goes, going back to Carriacou a little, to encourage people that yes, this is a very difficult time, and a lot of people are stressed out. Maybe one of the things that you can do is to get on the Osprey or get on the Emilia, the Dolly C, the SVG Air, and come up to Carriacou and visit the island for a day or two, and support our local businesses here to help our economy going here as well. So, and this is an open invitation for the people of Grenada and wherever you are to come up to Carriacou, of course, following the COVID protocols, because we want to keep Carriacou and Petit Martinique free from COVID-19. But indeed, Carriacou and Petit Martinique has been impacted negatively by the impacts of COVID-19, and so too our young people. And we are hoping that the government step in and create an enabling environment whereby our islands and our people, and our young people in particular, can flourish and grow. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Tevin. It's always a special treat to hear directly from the people of Carriacou and Petit Martinique, and to get updated on the situation there. We are all looking forward to you providing more information for us when we come to the questions
Definitely
segment, and also your information about what's happening with the youth of our country. So thanks again for a very good presentation, and we look forward to you sharing with us during the questions. Our fourth panelist, final for this evening, is no other than Mr. Phillip Telesford. Mr. Telesford is a chartered accountant by profession, and he's president of the Grenada Cooperative Credit Union League. He's worked in that sector for the past 19 years, and we are very privileged to have him share on the impact of COVID in the hotel sector, especially on the hotel workers of Grenada. Mr. Telesford, welcome.
Thank you, Valerie. You have been a very good host tonight. You look beautiful, beautiful smile. I think that is helping us a bit to be relaxed. I salute our party leader, Comrade Adrian Thomas, and the chairman of the party, Terence Moore, General Secretary Glenn Noel, PRO Claudia Joseph, who is really the person behind the scenes trying to make this work, and all the other persons who are supporting the networking activity that is happening here this evening. I also salute my fellow panelists who have gone before me this evening. It is an honor for me to be here. And so I want to thank everyone who is logged in tonight, listening via radio or Facebook or some other means. I want to salute you because I respect the fact that your time could have been engaged doing other things, but you have chosen to be with us here this evening. And for this, we are very, very grateful. Now, I worked, as Valerie hinted a moment ago, in the hotel sector for 19 years of my working life. And I have seen firsthand how certain things affect the sector. Went through 9/11, we would have gone through hurricanes Ivan and Emily, we would have gone through the recession. But I want to say to the panelists and to those who are listening and to Grenada that there is nothing like COVID. This is different. This is different. Now, when COVID came off and landed on the soils of Grenada in early 2020, we spoke about stimulus package and whatever, and so on and so on and so on. But I want to say very clearly that if there was ever a time that a stimulus is needed for Grenada and for Grenadans, and in particular the business sector, to re-engineer growth and progress within the society, that time is now. When we spoke about stimulus the first time, it was not needed. It was not needed. We were blowing hot air. Let's face it. As I speak to us this evening, the hotel operators in Grenada are suffering. They are suffering. And I want to say something that is very critical. That is, we neglected the agricultural sector and other productive sectors like agro-processing and some aspects of business, light manufacturing, and so for a number of years in this country. In my view, that was neglected. Now, the hotel sector is critical in that it is alongside SGU. The hotels alongside SGU represent the majority of the foreign exchange takings for the country. Without foreign exchange, without the US dollar, Grenada simply will not be able to find currency to buy basic items, to import basic items. What we have done over the years, we have taken coming out of the pre-independence and post-independence period, which we had a sort of productive Grenada. We have taken a productive Grenada, transformed it into a service-oriented kind of thing where we sell services, and in my view, neglected heavily agriculture, small, micro, medium businesses, and processing and light manufacturing. Because we have so done, it means it drove us in a corner, in a position. Hold a quick sec. Hold a quick sec.
Let's give Mr. Telesford a minute, and he's raised. He's back. Yes, let's give Mr. Telesford a minute to sort out whatever it is he had to deal with just in this moment. It is, you know, it is. I am so attentive to the points that he's raising about the situation with agriculture, and it seems to be one of the issues on the lips of almost every Grenadian or person who is interested in the future of Grenada, that our agricultural sector has not received the level of prioritization and investment and resources and support that most think it ought to be given. And here we are in a situation where for a while our port was closed. We are faced with the issue of feeding ourselves, and even income, employment and income. So that is key, along with the issues of agro-processing and light manufacturing. We have heard in the past that SGU contributes a significant percentage of the GDP of our country. And now he has pointed out that along with the hotel sector, generates the greatest amount of foreign exchange taking for Grenada. So one can imagine what is happening with the current situation in the hotel industry, how that is impacting our country. And I think due to his concern and his experience working in that sector, we are very fortunate to have him present on that subject right now. Maybe what we can do is, first of all, acknowledge the role of and the contribution of Ride Along and the facilities that are bringing this town hall meeting live. I haven't had an opportunity to welcome Ride Along, Vibes FM. It is also on NDC Facebook and YouTube channels. Thank you very much for bringing this live, and welcome, even if it's a bit late. Welcome. I'm unable to see you at the moment because we are using the Zoom facility or the Zoom platform. Well, Mr. Phillip is back with us, so hope you're okay, that everything is fine. It's okay. I just tried to fill in for you, so please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. And my humble apology. It is something I've never experienced this at home with one of the children. It's something that was very new to my wife, so I was called out. I think we're okay.
Yeah, that's fine. And that's security and safety and all of that first. Thank you.
Good.
You're excused.
Right. So I believe I was talking about, I was trying to map where we are, and I hope I'm not taking too much time. So the hotels, SGU, like it or not, they are essential in securing Grenada's foreign exchange earnings. We can do, because we depend on those ships to dock at our port to eat, we must have foreign exchange. And I presume that based on what has happened in the last 13 months or 14 months, that those numbers are running low. Nobody's talking about it, but I presume that by now it's running low. But we did that to ourselves. I know the CBI project is kicking up a storm on the other side, which we're not getting good reports on, so we don't know. So that might be filling the slot or filling the bucket, but we don't know because we don't get that kind of report. But those things are critical because you must eat and you must pay with foreign currency to import your goods. You cannot pay with EC dollars. And so if we run out of EC dollars, of US dollars, it simply means that you will not be able to import basic items, including medication, with all that you could do inside your country. You could just run yourself into problems. I say this to point out a reality that we have been playing with this economy for too long. And that is this one of the reasons why I decided to get involved. We must become concerned about Grenada. We must produce our way to prosperity. Selling your citizenship, selling your birthright. Every time you sell citizenship, you make your country smaller for the bona fide, authentic, original Grenadian. I am not saying that it's a program to get away with, to do away with. I'm saying we got to balance this economy. This balance is what has been absent following the insertion of the current government. This is what happened. They neglected those productive sectors. So I'm saying to us now that the hotel industry needs serious rescue, those local owners, because what you're going to find that sooner or later, somebody would not be able to pay the mortgage, those hotels are going to go up for sale. And we're going to be proudly boasting, as we would have done for another hotel or hotels here on this island. When the banks sold them, we will proudly welcome another hotel chain to the detriment of investors who would have invested decades into their own property here on island. So they need help. But even more so are the hundreds of workers who are currently out of a job. We are not only talking about hotel workers. We have those in the restaurants. We have those in ancillary businesses. We have those who returned from the ships. They are not employed. And the little savings that they would have had, it is running low. And sooner or later, we're going to end up with a set of destitutes on this island because we failed to plan. Because we failed to plan. In my view, when I look at Grenada, and when I look at what we are doing and how things are happening, I am seeing a clear absence of visionary leadership. I am seeing a clear absence of proper planning. And that is exactly why, in a situation like this, we cannot help ourselves. Thank God that COVID really did not arrest us in this country here. Had it happened, I don't know how we were going to do this. Because I tell you something, just a week or so ago, I waited with someone at the general hospital for 8 hours to see a doctor. 8 hours to see a doctor at the general hospital. God forbid that something really happen. We must plan. We cannot simply wake up and shake ourselves out of sleep and just go and do business as normal. This is not a time for business as normal. So we must develop our productive sectors. We must take care of our foreign exchange, but plan how and plan what will comprise our foreign exchange earners. We have a problem because a lot of the borrowers in this country, the ordinary workers, they would have rescheduled their loan. They would have taken the grace period that is extended to them by the bank and so on and so on and so on. So they would not have paid maybe for 6 months or for a year. But what is going to happen? When they begin to pay, they will be met with a higher repayment. Are their salaries increasing? It is just kicking the buck further down the road. And sooner or later, I said to us before, we're going to end up with a set of destitutes. God forbid. The same thing the government is doing, debt restructuring, the same thing comes home to us in our private homes because we are not planning the economy properly. Wages are too low. Let me tell you something. I agree with Brother Ray, and I say this 4% salary increase should never even be a contention or an issue because I served as financial controller for the last entity for the last 15 years, and I can tell you this. Money is a matter of choice, how you plan to spend it. This is how it will get spent. And if we do these things properly, I promise you that the results, the desired results, desired outcomes will be attained. And so I don't want to take much more of the time because I did not intend to speak for long, but I'm simply saying to us that we need to fix those things. Access to credit by the current hotels, overdraft facilities and short-term loans or soft loans or whatever, those things must be made available to the restaurants and to the guest houses and to the small hotels and those businesses, light manufacturing and the micro businesses are literally folding up every day. Those micro businesses and small businesses. We need to pay attention to these people because they had their business, invested all they have, took a chance, employ a few people, and now they're on the breadline. And this is the reality of this. Government now need to partner with grassroots organizations like the GDB, like the credit unions, yes, and other entities, even the Fast Cash and the Accel Finance, and so partner with these organizations to get monies into the hands of ordinary people to get this economy going. The only way the economy really starts turning over is when ordinary people have money in their hands and they go to spend it in the supermarket or buy things or what have you, get involved in some activity. And I want to end here. And I want to say thanks to you, Valerie, and thanks to the team for inviting me. I am very passionate about this because I'm very, very concerned about the direction of our country. Thank you.
Wow. Such a very informative presentation, Mr. Telesford, on some of the issues that maybe don't always come to the surface. And also that passion is welcome. It's welcome. Thank you very much. I am honored to have been able to moderate the first part of this town hall, and to hear the presentations or see the presentations of these very distinguished, very informed panelists. And already we have a lot of questions that have come to us that we will be addressing. And clearly, all of you who are participating are demonstrating your interest in the welfare of our country by being present today and sending in your questions. And towards the end, our last segment will allow you to make comments and suggestions. So let's go back then to the to the first panelist, Mr. Kennedy Roberts. And if we could, just so that the questions are organized and not all over the place, we will start off with the questions so far for Mr. Kennedy Roberts. I'll ask them one at a time, and we'll try, I would suggest that we take no more than 2-3 minutes to answer each question so that we get enough time to spread the questions around. And then when we have the last segment, you know, we could be a little more flexible and open to allow us as much input as possible. So, Mr. Roberts, if you're ready, the first question we have here for you is, how is COVID affecting the mental health of Grenadians? What are some of the coping strategies that they are using? And I guess you would add, what are some of the strategies that you and the NDC would recommend?
Thank you, Sister Val. And this question is hitting at one of the key issues relating to COVID, not just in Grenada, but throughout the world. We're seeing studies showing that health workers, for example, are being faced with a lot of pressures having to deal with the situation of COVID, and being on the front line, having to provide services to persons doing the tests and so on. It is very stressful for health workers. In the Grenada context, we are fortunate that we have not had many hospitalization, and the number of cases we've had have not been very severe. So the impact on health workers. But in terms of the general public, we are seeing a situation where a lot of people are going through difficult situations, economically, family-wise, educationally, having to deal with the children, and the stresses of life is taking a toll on a lot of people. So what are some of the things we can do to help address it? Now, this situation of COVID has created the opportunity for a lot of families to work closer together, to do things together. We're encouraging families to get more involved with exercising. If you have a little space outside where you can get involved in some gardening, do these things and pay more attention to the little agriculture and exercise. We have to be able to communicate and chat with people. When we're going through difficulties, it's important that we have someone we can chat to. It is not always someone in the formal health sector, but you can have a friend, and speaking about your situation in a manner where you feel confident that the person is seriously listening and can possibly help you is a very important element of coping with the depression and a lot of these mental health issues. We're seeing also that a lot of families, because of the economic situation, cannot meet the basic needs. So you're having young people who are unemployed and have to depend on other means to get financial resources to meet their daily necessities. This is creating a lot of difficulty, especially among the youth. Young people are going through a lot of difficult, stressful situations, and one of the responsibilities of government is to address the health promotion, health communication needs. So I believe that there's a lot that we can do in terms of improving the communication to help people deal with the stresses and share information on coping skills generally. So there's a responsibility for as individuals in the family, but there's also a role for the policymakers.
Thank you very much, Kennedy. I have heard in recent times a suggestion, a strong recommendation that we take, as Kennedy is saying, individual responsibility and ask people, how are you doing? Because, you know, we are very proud people. We're very proud. We don't like to expose our vulnerability, that we don't have money, that we're suffering. Even when the situation is dire, we find difficulty in sharing and expressing. We don't want to reveal our vulnerability. And so one of the things that I'm hearing recommended in relation to what Kennedy is saying is just ask people, how are you doing? And sometimes you'd be surprised, just as you were suggesting, Kennedy, you'd be surprised that people are able to, they sense that you care, and it gives them an opening, a kind of neutral opening to share what they feel comfortable sharing. And even that little exchange may be a blessing for them for the day. You know, you would never know until you actually try it. So that, as far as the mental health one, I've been hearing that is recommended, and I'm glad that the National Democratic Congress is making that recommendation to people as something that everybody can do as far as dealing with the situation.
Sister Val, if I could just add another situation that several persons have mentioned of importance is the government is treating people in a very partisan way, and the resources of the country is not being distributed in an equitable manner. There is still a lot of party favors and situations where the entire population is not being given an equal treatment. The equity isn't there at all. We're also seeing, and the whole issue of poverty is being highlighted to a great extent. And when I mentioned earlier on that a lot of families have problems paying their basic bills, this is real as we move around. The amount of persons, number of families that are going through this is alarming. And some of us are blessed to have a steady job still and a steady income, but a lot of Grenadians are going through difficulties and they're not feeling the support of the government. And this is one of the things the NDC is committed to doing differently, having a more transparent approach to benefits for the people and treating all Grenadians in an equitable manner.
There are a couple other questions that I want to ask you, Kennedy, and then I'll move on.
Okay.
To the next person to give a chance for the spread. The second question is, there is a lot of debate about wearing of masks. What is the NDC's position on the protocols in place?
Again, the research is very clear. Wearing a mask properly reduces the likelihood of the virus being spread. We have to be aware that the COVID virus has certain qualities that makes it not very easy to be spread. First of all, the fact that we're suggesting to have the social distancing. It is important because based on the information available, and we have to acknowledge that the information has changed over time. As time progresses, we get more information and the recommendations are changing. However, we see a lot of people wearing masks because you say it's the law and you should wear it, but it's not done properly. And we have to acknowledge that wearing the mask properly, it makes a difference in terms of the spread. People will say, well, you do not have community spread now, so why should we be wearing a mask? Shouldn't we be functioning as normal? We have to show that the global pandemic is real. And while we are taking precautions to minimize the virus entering the country, we still have to be very careful, because you see in some of our neighbors in St. Vincent and St. Lucia, the number of cases have been increasing significantly. And we have to try and work within the realities and continue wearing the masks, continue to follow social maintenance. However, the importance of washing your hands and the basic hygiene. We've seen, even in Grenada now, people are making the comment that they're not seeing people even with the common cold. In recent times, you're not even seeing anybody with the common cold because people are washing their hands. They're trying to reduce touching their mouth and eyes and nose and so on. And these are some of the health messages that must continue after this COVID pandemic. We have to continue with the health promotion. So it is important to follow the protocols, and this reduces the risk. And while it might not prevent it totally, I think it's the right thing to do. And until we are feeling more comfortable with the spread globally, I believe that the right thing is to continue following the precautions.
I have a third question for you for this segment, Kennedy, and that is, and this is a tricky one, and that is regarding the vaccines. Many people are reluctant to take the vaccine and complain that wearing masks and about wearing masks and other protocols. What would the NDC say to these people?
Well, again, it continues from the previous one about the mask. Now it adds the vaccine. And in Grenada, we're using the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, which is the one I understand that we're scheduled to get under the COVAX system. I believe that the benefits of the vaccine outweighs the negative consequences of getting COVID. And especially for people who want to travel the world and to function in a manner that the new normal is going to require. The vaccine is a mechanism that would help us do that. We all know that from childhood, we've been immunized for various health problems. I remember going to Suriname a couple of years ago and I had to get the yellow fever vaccine. A lot of people have a reluctance because of the time it took to develop this COVID vaccine. But when you understand that a lot of the vaccines were already had a base, a lot of work was done previously and they worked on what they already had in existence, it we could understand the speed at which it was developed. So persons who have problems, I think there's a lot of information on the internet that you could go and find, but generally, as a public health professional, as a person who have looked at the data, I believe that the vaccine is beneficial in reducing the severity of the disease. We know it doesn't prevent you from getting the COVID, but this is an approach that is going to help not just Grenada, but the world in getting back to some level of normalcy.
Thank you very much, Kennedy. I'm sure we're going to have some other topics that come up on the question of health, but just to shift a bit to the industrial climate and the workers' situation, I would like to now to direct the next batch of questions to Mr. Ray Roberts. Ray, the first question I have here is that the proliferation of contract labor and outsourcing of work are areas of growing concerns for Grenadian workers. If the NDC gets into government, what plans are there to address these concerns?
Thanks a lot, Val, and let me say to Phillip, nice presentation, and to all listeners and viewers. Again, it's a pleasure being part of this town hall promoted by the NDC. Quite clearly, NDC has a history. In fact, the foundation fathers are people who left a legacy that we can see where the NDC came from. The late George Brazil in particular, he was one of the people who worked with labor unions tirelessly. In fact, his career as a teacher, trade union might have been second only to his teaching profession. I say that to say that the labor code, which governs employment in Grenada, two sections, the employment and labor relations. So the employers have a section, workers have a section. In that labor code, you have what governs employment in Grenada. What is happening now, or what has happened under the NNP, and more so in the last 7 years, they have exploited sections of the labor code and have abused sections. There are jobs in Grenada that are forever, will be temporary jobs. Let's go to the hotel industry. Phillip spoke about it. There are 2 seasons. There's the up season, that's when winter, November, December, January, February, March, hotels have an influx. So obviously they employ more people, waitresses and others. When that peak goes down, they create less opportunities. So obviously the hotel will have to lay off some of the workers. So we understand how temporary jobs are created. But what has happened today in the teaching service, if you look back from since Uncle Gary era, you would notice that there are jobs in the teaching service that have continued. And the reason why I say Uncle Gary era, independence came in 74 and it has evolved until now. So there are jobs that are permanent jobs. Today you have teachers with the certification, having gone through the college. They are temporary for 5. In fact, I have a letter from one person who had teachers college qualification and was temporary for 18 years. They have done some, I may say, appointment with some of these workers, but there are still workers who are 10, 12 years old. In the public service now, I don't have the accurate figure, so I wouldn't say it, but the growing trend in the public service, contract workers. Why are you on contract? Every 2 years or every year, you have to come back. Who are you going back to? So the government has created a party base, not noticeable unless you pay attention, simply because you have a job and young people, well, I would say unfortunately, some people pay no attention to their status until when something comes up, they are impacted. So the government has exploited that to create that second tier in the public service of contract workers. And therefore, you are told every year, come back, so you know who employ you. So you have that loyalty. So that in its sense has been one of the areas I would say it openly, to me it's a bribe. You keep people in that position so you can use them politically as long as you want. So NDC behavior would obviously to what is the gospel, which is the labor code. It says in the public service, you have 2 years to prove yourself. That means you're temporary. If you meet the qualification after 2 years, you are appointed. The PRG did it. Sir Eric Matthew did it. Under Nicholas Braffett, Sir Nicholas Braffett, it happened. It is just not happening under the NNP because of what I just said. So I would assure workers in the public service, if NDC gets the chance, or you give us the chance to be part of the leadership of this country, to be in government, you can rest assured the principles of the Nicholas Braffett, George Brizan era would certainly return forthwith. You need to unmute.
Thank you very much, Ray. I have a few more questions. Public officers' pension is also a major concern, and you have to admit it's no easy challenge to deal with. Again, how will the NDC treat with that issue, as controversial as it may be?
Well, I don't think people sometimes remember, under the leadership of Prime Minister Tillman Thomas, the records are there to show. There were about 300 of us brought together at the Trade Center, employers, trade unions, workers, people representing all organizations, the churches, to have OECS and the Caribbean Development Bank look at what we have, the cost to the government, and offered solutions. In fact, under Prime Minister Thomas, an expert from the ILO who is specialized in pension and gratuity, he came here, I can't pronounce his name, so I won't even try, he's from Sri Lanka, and left a platform on which Grenada, I'm not saying government now, Grenada ought to follow. When the government lost office in 2013, the NNP took over, and that was shelved. Well, I'll be fair with you and I'll be honest. Not even the unions would want to do that. The number of people that you have to pay, if you go back, you will be talking about, well, the estimate then was $1 billion something. But that does not prevent us from treating with what is the law. The law says appointed public officers under the Public Service Commission, they are entitled to a pension. These people have attained the qualification, they have been employed by the Public Service Commission. There are two other categories, temporary workers and contract workers unfortunately, the colonial powers did not seem to cater for them. Some of them get ex gratia. There are benefits that they get, but the permanent people are entitled to pensions. The PRG, I'm not blaming the PRG because the PRG had wisdom to see in 1981 or thereabout that the system that we now have of paying pension cannot be sustained because remember, pensions are paid to people from taxpayers' money. So they had the wisdom to implement the NIS. None of the succeeding governments treated with that symptom. They allowed it to reach where it reached. In fact, they only recently started addressing it, increasing the payments. I'm saying to you, had that been addressed way back when, under the first NNP, we would have had the constitutional changes, and the workers, I'm sure, would not have minded because they would have received compatible to what the government is paying right now. But you can't ask workers, to ignore what the Constitution has and accept what the government is proposing, which is less. So I would say to you and workers in general, the NDC has a principled position on it, is that we would obviously dialogue with the workers' movement. Clearly, we will follow the principles of the Constitution and the directive of the court because the court has ruled. But as I said, there is no way you could find that tranche of money to pay people way back when. But those who are leaving, I cannot, I don't want to say anything else, but you have to treat with those who are leaving. But you must recognize that you owe others. Some of them have already passed away, but their estate remains. So in a simple sentence, the NDC is committed not to dragging along, but to look for the practical solutions, as was done in Jamaica, Barbados, Jamaica, and Guyana. We are the only ones who are prolonging this thing, I don't know for what reason. And this government has been in office longer than any other government. So they had adequate time to treat with all the problems that, that are now at hand.
Thank you very much, Ray. We are now about 24 minutes from the scheduled time to end the town hall. And so I would like to give, to have some questions for the other two panelists and then assign whatever time we have at the end to go back to a couple of the questions that we still have pending. I do have a question for Tevin Andrew. It is, how will your party address the issues fishermen face with low prices, inadequate cold storage, ice, and a quality grading system that is manipulated by the buyers and exporters? So that question is for Tevin for the carrier crew situation.
I recall in thanks again, and very good question to the person whoever posted the question. I recall in 2008 when the NDC got into office to 2013, though the world was experiencing one of the worst financial crises in history, or in recent years, the NDC made it its duty to keep fish price at an all-time high of $11 a pound. And that is, in this case, tuna price. And I'm guessing this is what you're talking about. And in the past, of course, the price fluctuated $4, $5, $6, but it remained at an all-time high under the National Democratic Congress. The NDC, the point I'm getting at is the NDC has been committed to fishermen and will be committed to fishermen and will continue to be committed to fishermen as it relates to keeping the prices at an all-time high. As it relates to fish, the ice and storage and all of that, we have demonstrated in the past, just as we did as it relates to keeping fish price at an all-time high, tuna price at an all-time high, by investing the necessary resources to get the necessary ice equipment. So it is something that we are going to do when we are given the opportunity to get there. We have demonstrated that we care about the fishing industry and we care about the fishermen, and we didn't only talk about it, but we showed the fishermen what we did. And the fishermen of Petit Martinique, Grenada on a whole, could attest to having some of the best days under the National Democratic Congress government. One of the ways we can improve the fishing industry in Grenada as well is that we need to introduce technology in fishing. You know, it's back in the 90s and in the 80s, we use the same method in the 21st century. You know, the bigger countries are using technology to go fishing. I think that this is something that we need to tap into. Yes, so to help improve catches and quality catches and all of that, use technology. So it is something that the National Democratic Congress is committed in doing, so that everyone benefits, not just the fishermen, but also the consumers and the people in general of Carriacou, Grenada, Petit Martinique. I hope that answered the question. If not, please let me know if it didn't answer the question.
Yeah, we could forward them to you, but on another subject, how can the NDC improve the educational environment here on Petit Martinique? Due to inadequate transportation, students and people on a whole are deprived of some of the opportunities that are offered.
And thanks for that question. And I have a feeling I know who asked the question. It has always been a concern of the people of Petit Martinique. Listen, I recall sometime in 2018, the present member of parliament said that she's going to ensure that a service is provided in terms of a extra trip with a boat to Petit Martinique at a certain hour, leaving Carriacou to Petit Martinique, to accommodate students and workers, adults that are having afternoon classes or having evening classes, to get them back home safely to Petit Martinique. Presently, what happens? There's a service in terms of a boat that provides a service between Carriacou and Petit Martinique that leaves Carriacou at a certain hour and heads back to Petit Martinique. And if you miss that boat, you have to charter a boat to get up to Petit Martinique or overnight in Carriacou. And it is very costly to charter a boat to get to Petit Martinique. And oftentimes some people don't want to stay down to Carriacou because also it's a cost and it's also inconveniencing people. So they prefer to go back home. I believe it is government's responsibility to provide a service to students who may have to spend extra time in Carriacou in school, whether it's at TAMCC or at the secondary schools, to get extra courses and what have you, lectures and so forth. So the service could be provided so that they could take them up in the evening. So that is something that has to happen. The National Democratic Congress is committed in ensuring that happens, that a special trip is provided for the students, adults, workers for Petit Martinique, because it's unacceptable that at 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, in the evening, that the boat goes up and you are stranded, have to pay $150 to charter a boat to go back to Petit Martinique. It is government responsibility to ensure that our people get to and from the islands. And that is something that the NDC is committed in doing.
Thank you very much, Tevin. I have one or two more, but just to make sure we have a fair spread of the questions, I'd like to ask Mr. Telesford a couple, and then we come back to the general session. Hopefully we have enough time. Mr. Telesford, how does the pandemic affect hotel workers? I know you mentioned it a bit in your earlier presentation, but I don't know if you want to expand on that a bit. How is the pandemic affecting hotel workers?
Thank you again, Valerie, and thanks to the person who would have posted the question. It was just about a couple of weeks ago. I was paying a visit to a particular village, and a young woman, a married woman with family, she came out and she was speaking to my wife. And I was listening in on the conversation. And what she was saying is that she worked in the hotel industry for a number of years, all her life, as a matter of fact. And now she's at home. She has young children. She has a family. She has a mortgage. And the biggest problem that she faces right now is fear. Fear of not knowing what she's going to give her children. Fear of walking into the supermarket. And I'm giving you just as the points that was raised at a point in time. Fear of walking into the supermarket to face escalating prices. It was said by her that in her view, every time she goes into the supermarket, the prices increase. Fear of sending her child to school and returning home with COVID. Fear that she's going to lose her mind because she's worrying so much. Fear that she would lose her property because they got a moratorium on the payment of the loan, but both she and her husband, who worked in the sector, is currently unemployed. And so I say this to say that I do not believe that that young woman who was speaking to my wife is different to the hundreds of hotel workers and those who worked on boats and in restaurants, and those who worked in small businesses who are currently home with absolutely no one to turn to, who cannot walk into a credit union or bank to borrow money, to do anything, because they do not know how they're going to repay. And who wants to live a life that is honest, with some measure of integrity, so they cannot do things that will bring a reproach to their families. And this is the reality. I am talking about people who have families, who just does not know what to do and is suffering from fear at this time because they cannot cope with the situation. So I want to just use that, only that particular scenario to answer your question, and I hope it drives home the point forcefully enough.
Well, that begs another question, which was that somebody asked, and what about the stimulus package? Is that, does the NDC think that the stimulus package is required or needed, now to address especially the kind of situation that you were talking about? So what can you offer us as far as that issue is concerned?
Right. People's lives is not a game. We play Monopoly. You buy properties with paper money and you play around. Families who are on the breadline, on the verge of losing their property, who have to pay a doctor, who have to buy medication, who have to buy food for the family. This is no laughing matter. This is not a game. This is not a game. So these people are experiencing, they're living through these situations. So the reality is that a stimulus package that was proposed or that happened some months ago in 2020, that was a game. It was not called for at the time, in a sense, because I'm saying this is really when we have trouble in Grenada. This is when people are in trouble. I want to say this. People are in trouble now more than any other time. This is when trouble has come home because the period of the moratorium has expired. Get me? People are in trouble now because they the little savings that they had has been eaten up because they had to make two ends meet during the period of COVID, right? The stimulus package, a stimulus is something that is able to jolt, stimulate, ignite, rejuvenate an economy. What was given before was just a little pittance so that people do not really have to touch or dig into the savings if they had, because wages are extremely low in this country for the ordinary man and woman. So because it is so low, a lot of people do not have savings. You know how people get savings in this country? I'm talking about ordinary people now, not those who, the professionals who have monies. I'm talking about the ordinary people. They get savings because they are a member of a credit union, most of them. And by virtue of that, they are forced to save, because the principle of the credit union, if you borrow from me, you have to show goodwill by saving in droplets. That is what they save. So by the time they finish paying off the loan, there is a little something there. They call it a kakada in the account. This is what they have. I'm saying to you now, if there was ever a time for a stimulus to reignite the economy and to put monies in the people's hands so that they can spend, yes, hotels are advertising, come and spend a weekend and so on, people cannot go. Wages are too low. There is no spending power, and that is the reality. Yes, a stimulus package is needed now more than ever before. So we need to put some monies into the hands of businesses so that they can bring the people back to work. I am not saying write a check for $1,200 or $2,000 and give it to Tom Jones. Tom Jones may need it. So you have to identify those cases. But those people who can work, have a job, but cannot return because the employer cannot afford to pay them, you may wish to develop a program where you can inject money into those companies so that people can be gainfully employed, brought back to work, and have the economy moving. Because you want people, listen, money alone cannot solve the problem. The lady said she is afraid. She wants to get out of her house. She wants to feel as a person again. She wants to be gainfully employed in the company of her co-workers. That is a psychological therapy for her. That is what the Grenadian people need at this point in time. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. And the observation you made is so important, that at the beginning of this pandemic, people who lost their jobs or were negatively impacted went to their savings and all their reserves. So there was a period when those who had, at least those who had some little reserve, could, use it or get the moratorium for the loans or whatever it is. But now, 1 year later, is when the crunch time has arrived, and therefore the use of a stimulus would be much more impactful now. And as you speak, like all the other panelists, I see the passion that you are expressing, generated from a concern about the welfare and well-being of our nation and the population. Because if we put ourselves in the position of the family or the lady that you spoke about, you could very well see how that could be impacted, that could be very impactful. I have a couple other questions, and therefore I will spread them around to the rest in the last few minutes that we have, to spread them around. And we'll have to really just give 1 minute per answer, because that will allow us to deal with a few questions that are for different panelists. The first one is the National Insurance Scheme. And I think that is very relevant. How would the NDC address the issue of the National Health insurance scheme, especially in the context of this pandemic? So relevant question. So you get 2 minutes, Mr. Roberts.
No, this question about national health insurance could take an entire town hall on its own.
Yes.
It was a hot discussion in the last general election, and a couple of years prior to that, this government was trying to push an approach based on the fact that they got some funding somewhere. They promoted some research with the University of the West Indies. They established an office within the NIS. We're not hearing anything about that anymore because Grenadian living in the US, Dr. Ned and his team have been talking about an approach which I have attended their meetings, and it is not consistent with our health system in the country. As I said early on, for Grenadians to feel the quality of health care, they must be comfortable to attend a health clinic and be confident that they can see a physician or a health worker that can properly diagnose them. We have a situation in the country now where our dental health program is almost non-existent. You know, we're not focusing on children, and if somebody goes to one of our dental clinics, it's primarily for an extraction. They're treating Grenadians with total disrespect. The sort of quality of care that we deliver in our health services is below par. So first and foremost, the NDC is committed to having genuine dialogue with not just the health workers, but other stakeholders. Brother Phillip made reference to St. George's University. We have over 16,000 alumni. We have Grenadians who have graduated from St. George's University and willing to contribute, but are prevented from doing so for various reasons. We have Grenadians in the diaspora we can tap into. So when we talk about national health insurance, it must be a program that is developed based on the Grenadian reality. And unless we go down to primary health care, unless we go down to how our hospital is managed, we're not going to implement it. So I know that for the next election, the government will again come and put it as one of their promises. But I hope the Grenadian people will acknowledge that they're just fooling us and telling us what they think we need to hear to continue maintaining power. The Grenadian people, I think, are ready to change this government. And the NDC is the mechanism, is the vehicle by which this can get done. So by calling on all Grenadians, think of the country, think of where we want to go, think of what we have been experiencing for the last 25 years, apart from the 4 years, 2008 to 2013, when the NDC was in office. Dr. Mitchell has been our prime minister, and he has failed us. Our education system has failed young people. Our health system has failed us. So as a result, I believe national health insurance as an integral part of social security is the theme, is the mechanism, and the details of that we're going to get bit and bit over time.
Okay, thank you very much, Kennedy. I have a question, one last question for everybody. I have a quick question for Tevin. Somebody's asking what's going on in Havie Vale with the port. If it is the NDC, if the NDC got into office, will you be in favor of moving the port back to Hillsborough?
I'll answer it this way.
Did you hear the question?
Yes, I'll answer. Very good question. Thank you for your question. I'll answer it this way. Hillsborough has been the port for many years. Our ancestors knew why. They chose Hillsborough to be the port of entry, the main port of entry. And I believe that Hillsborough should be a port of entry. It is something that the National Democratic Congress is committed in ensuring that happens, that Hillsborough remains a port of entry, that we find some ways to either repair the jetty or what have you. But definitely we are committed in ensuring that Hillsborough remain a port of entry. As it relates to the port, that's a different matter. But ensuring that Hillsborough remains or continue to be a port of entry, because presently it's not a port of entry. The only port, the only port of entry is Harvey Vale. Everything was moved down to Tyrrell Bay. Sadly, no impact assessment study was done to see the effects the move would have on the Town of Hillsborough and the micro and macro economy there. And it is severely affecting the businesses there. The NDC is committed to change that, to improve the situation.
Thank you very much. Ray, a final question for you, Ray. I would have liked to ask everybody to do final comments, but I can only get one in, so I'll use the question as your final comment. Workers, and especially workers who are not represented by unions, often complain that their issues are not addressed promptly by the Ministry of Labor, and in some cases they are allowed to die a natural death. Is that an issue of concern for the NDC? So, Mr. Roberts, I don't know how you're going to do that in a minute or 2 minutes, given the time, but it's an important question, especially for the workers who are not represented by unions. And I suspect there are a fair amount of them. There's a fair amount of them.
They're in the vast majority. I would say to you that...
oh, is it the vast majority?
The vast majority. Labour Minister Peter David has not been to his word. He has really been just flamboyant and talkative, media savvy. But the Ministry of Labour is at its worst. If you look at the staffing, there is no deputy, and the staff is basically clerical workers. If you look at the NDC era, you will see the Deputy Labour Commissioner, who of course is our political leader at the moment, and several other areas. I would say to you that I joined the NDC because I saw it as a principled, decent group. And when I hear the Prime Minister talk about we can't govern, I mean, we don't thief. That's the first thing I will tell you. It's a clean group. But the problem is, I don't think people have sat back. Well, there are other reasons why we are where we are. We don't have the money to influence numbers on our side. That's the biggest deficit we face. The deficit is less than 10,000. But I would tell you, and I would assure workers, use principle, give the NDC a chance, and you will be definitely treated as you deserve. And I would want to thank you, Val, for hosting a wonderful program, along with the other panelists, and Sister Claudette and everybody else who made it possible, Ron. Excellent engagement, and I hope we can do it again. Thanks a lot.
Well, I have a note from the PR committee that we should let the panelists make their final comments. So I will go with Mr. Telesford first, and then Kennedy, but well, 2 or 3 minutes. So Ray, if you still want to make a final comment, because I know there were 1 or 2 questions that came for you that were not addressed. So if you want to use that to make your final comment, you can go ahead and do that. So Kennedy, would you like to start by making your final comment first?
No problem at all. I want to start by thanking you, Sister Val, for moderating and doing such a good job, and the time has flown by pretty quickly. I want the Grenadian people to rest assured that the NDC is working in the interest of all Grenadians. We recognize that the political tribalism that we've seen over the last several decades should not be the way in which we move forward. I think the Grenadian people are ready to rally around an alternative to this government, and the NDC is giving that a vehicle for everyone to join and participate in the process. We're going to be having these forums to engage the population, but we also will be doing other things. We want to encourage people to register so that they can be able to vote when the time comes. We ask people to be a brother's keeper. Reach out to your neighbors and reach out to those who are going through more difficulties in your communities. This COVID experience is teaching us lots of lessons, but let one of the lessons be one of caring for each other and reaching out to help, give a helping hand. So those of us who are producing more in the garden, share it with our neighbors. Those of us who can help out with monitoring and helping out a family in need in whatever way, we should really try and do more of that. So I want to, again, give Grenadians that hope, that confidence that the future can be brighter. But we need to work together in a unified way. We have to acknowledge our differences, but come together as a team that will be working in the interest of Grenadians. So again, I want to express the gratitude to be here tonight to share the information about health, because it is really important that we take personal responsibility, acknowledge the role of the family, the community, the institutions, the church, the schools, but acknowledge the role of leadership at the policy level. Thank you and blessings to all.
Next we have, thank you very much, Kennedy. Next we have Ray. Ray, would you like to make a final comment?
All right, well, I will just see one other thing that I think that I would have liked to address, and that is we in the NDC see labor as one of the strongest pillars. We all are workers, whether you are CEO or you are sanitation worker, you are a worker, and the labor code represents you. There is something for everybody. And we want to assure workers that it is an area Grenadian workers need to focus on. Too many people are taking the labor code for granted, not reading it, not following it. They need to step up and protest. Our good friend, my good friend, likable friend, Honorable Peter David, don't miss a Labor Day. So we must demand from him that contract labor, as is written in the labor code, become the gospel and not the Prime Minister's theory that is to exploit poor and ordinary workers, because they're the ones who are contract workers for 20, 30 years. So Val, I would want workers to take that away, and I would join with Kennedy in thanking Tevin. Always wonderful to see you, very informative. Well, my neighbor in the south, Phillip, good to see you also, nice presentation. And Val, I join with the accolades that you were wonderful, charming, and everything else. So
thank you, Ray. Thank you, Ray, my pleasure. Tevin?
Yes, Sister Val. Let me take the opportunity, of course, to thank everyone for participating, for your wonderful comments, questions, and for viewing. Let me also take the opportunity to just encourage the Grenadian public. And when I say Grenadian, I'm talking about the country on a whole, Carriacou and Petit-Matic involved, that we must look out for our young people. Yes, a number of us are really impacted seriously by COVID, and look out for your fellow brothers and sisters in general. A lot of people are hurting and they need a lot of support. So just a phone call, as Brother Kennedy pointed out, will do. And because a number of people are hurting, but oftentimes we talk about the youth, but we forget the seniors. And I have something about the seniors in my heart. We must also remember them. It will be okay to give them a call, just to speak to them, because if you remember, usually they might have been able to go out and socialize, but now they can't because of the fear of COVID. So it's important to give them a call if you can. If you can, maybe you can give a visit, but it's important to follow the COVID.
I think the internet stopped, Kevin.
Followed. It's very important so to look out for our fellow brothers and sisters, but more so in particular, our senior citizens. Yes. So, and I want to take this opportunity again to encourage people to come up to Carriacou and Petit-Matic. Come and take a little vacation, spend a few days, get rid of the stress and the struggle and the worry and so forth. There's so many beautiful places and things to see. Visit the Carriacou Museum. You heard in the interlude, I am the public relation officer there. Visit the museum. Visit all the beautiful sites in Carriacou and Petit-Matic. So Brother Ray, I'm hoping that you will come up one of these days soon.
Excellent, Tevin. Thank you very much. I have heard reports about all of your outreach to the senior citizens, and they benefit and that they love you so much. You know, thanks for doing it, and maybe representing all those of us who are not able to do it in any moment. But thanks for the reminder, because they're especially isolated. Well, Carriacou doesn't have COVID, but people have to take precautions, especially the elderly. So thank you very much, Tevin. And last but by no means least, we'll have our final comments from Mr. Telesford.
Thank you again, Valerie. What a wonderful pleasure it was indeed, or it is indeed, because it's not over until it's over, to be in your great company and to be in great company of Brother Tevin Andrews. You're a great man. And I am particularly impressed with him as a young man. The way he spoke tonight, I mean, it clearly demonstrates that this young gentleman is indeed a true ambassador of Carriacou and Petite Martinique. Brother Ray, indeed, you are a champion for workers' rights. You were very clear, and I really support your agenda in respect of workers. And Brother Roberts, your son does a guru in health, and indeed, your knowledge and your experience makes the difference. And so I just want to thank everybody for what they would have done and for this particular event. I believe it is an important event. NDC, I commend you. I am a patriot of Grenada, and I will die a patriot of this wonderful country. And I thank you for the opportunity to serve along with you, NDC. I'm not going to say anything more than what I said in relation to workers. I believe I've said it clearly enough. But I want to thank the NDC and its executive for affording me this opportunity to be part of this panel. And I want to be able to serve with you. So I thank you for this opportunity. I am, and say this loud and clear, I am who I am. I'm usually a very straight up person. I say as I feel and as I see things, and not meaning to offend people. But I believe if we work together, we can fulfill our dreams together. I love this country, and I know you do too. Let us together build a wonderful island. Thank you again, Valerie, and thank you, Team NDC.
Well, thank you very much. It was a privilege for me to serve in this capacity, moderating, and to experience your passion, your dedication, and learn from your expertise. I want to give a shout out as we bring this town hall meeting to a close to all the persons from Brooklyn. We see people from Brooklyn, from Long Island, from the UK, and wherever else that I missed, participating in this town hall. Again, I think it demonstrates your interest in the welfare of our country. I want to also take the opportunity to announce that the NDC will be continuing the series of town hall meetings. You will get more information, so stay tuned and look out for the specifics regarding when and where these next town hall sessions will take place. Thanks to Ride Along for bringing this program live. Thanks to Vibes FM 103 also. Thanks to our IT support, Mr. Ron Redhead. Thanks to all of you who attended the town hall, and feel free to use those same facilities to continue to express your questions or your thoughts, your perspectives on these issues, so you can bring it to the attention of the NDC. Thanks, of course, to the panelists and to the organizers, especially Ms. Claudette Joseph as PRO. And I just want to make a final comment regarding the resilience of our people. Grenadians, as we listen to this, these presentations and follow what's happening in our country. We recognize that this is an extremely difficult period, and we have to bring the negative issues, the difficult issues forward, the challenges. However, I also want to point out, by way of balance, that our people have been in very difficult circumstances before. Just recently, in 2004, we had Hurricane Ivan, we had Janet, we had a variety of major shocks and challenges in the past that we were able to dig deep and bring out the resilience that was needed to overcome. And clearly the leadership this evening has displayed what the talent and competence necessary to help lead Grenadians out of this situation. So thanks again to everybody, and hope you have a very good evening and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.